What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Unqualified Film Bros. You've got just the three of us today. Sorry about that for all you Ben fans out there. I'm one of them. I miss
Hmm, me too.
um and I miss him especially today because we've got a fun one to talk about. It is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume number three. Not number three, just volume three. Um, I don't know if there's much else for me to do as an intro because I kind of want to jump in. And I want to hear you guys. I want to hear your thoughts. So, George, I talked to you a little bit, so I'm actually gonna throw it over to Declan, who I have no thoughts on.
Mhm.
I've gotten no thoughts on from the film.
Mhm.
That's my
Yeah.
bad, buddy.
Mhm. Mhm. No, I'll just very quickly say, just like before anyone who hasn't seen the film yet, the one regret I had when going to see this film is that straight up the Guardians Christmas special, holiday special, it is has important character stuff in it that sets up this movie. Nothing that's like will like ruin the film if you don't see it. But it's like but the Guardians Christmas special, if you forgot to see it this Christmas, highly recommend seeing it before volume 3 because it's good as well as being important setup. With all that being said, Guardians volume 3 is fantastic. I think the Guardians films have the best thing about them for me has been the characters and like the amount of like development that and just depth each of them has been given, and I think this one continues that trend. I yeah, this one was fantastic. Yeah, probably in
George?
agreement with both of you, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think even if Ben were here, he would agree. He did text us earlier today saying, why do I always miss the fun ones? I think the last one he missed was Cocaine Bear, so that
Oh my
statement
god.
Yeah.
stands. Um,
It
God, that movie was so much fun.
it
So I'm
was.
Speaking
peeking
of
out
fun,
now.
speaking of fun movies, Guardians Volume 3. Yeah, the holiday special. I've only seen it once. I saw it when it came out. Really, all you need to know is that Mantis is Peter Quill's half brother, and
Yeah,
that the Guardians are setting up
Sister.
their base on nowhere. That's it. That's
yeah,
really all the
that is
important
true.
stuff.
It's
Uh,
mentioned once in the film and basically ignored. Like if we didn't know that that was the case, it wouldn't really have.
yeah,
It wouldn't
Nebula
have.
Nah.
has a one-off line to Mantis saying he's your brother in the
Yeah.
first
Mhm.
5 minutes of the movie about Quill.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
It's a
and
little bit of a jump that it's like while you can accept it, it's a bit of like a what sort of moment, but
yeah,
nothing
the
nothing
Guardians
too.
holiday special is a ton of fun. Way better than the Star Wars holiday special,
Yes, yes.
which is not hard to do. That's an hour and a half of sheer torture minus the animated segment, and the Guardians holiday special is 45 minutes of James Gunn written and directed fun.
Hmm.
So on to the film at hand.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. Um, it's James Gunn's magnum opus so far in his career. The first Guardians film will always hold a special place in my heart, but I think this one's better.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I've been going back and forth on that idea for the last 5 days since I saw the movie, and just the emotional weight of Rocket's arc in this film takes it a little bit higher, and it's neck and neck
Hmm.
between the two films. But I think this is the best of the Guardians trilogy. We don't have to talk about Volume 2. But Volume 3, it keeps the same level of like humor and heart that you would expect from not only a Guardians film but from a James Gunn film. And you get the added emotional weight, and then you get a truly fantastic story.
Hmm.
This is the kind of story that even though the MCU is so saturated now, the post Endgame universe is just, and I am still one of the people who is highest on the Marvel Cinematic Universe right now.
Mm.
It's so chaotically jumbled. There's so much going on. Like it's been, I don't know, half a dozen movies since Eternals, and nobody's mentioned Tiamat chilling in the Pacific Ocean, frozen in ice
Just
and
one
stone.
line would be nice.
Nobody's mentioned it. And now they're gonna have to explain it away in some way, shape, or form. I don't know. But this film is being called the best Marvel movie since Endgame. It's not. Uh, Spider-Man: No Way Home is far and away the best MCU movie since Endgame. This is an easy second since Endgame. It's better than Wakanda Forever. It's better than Multiverse of Madness. It's better than Shang-Chi. Those are probably the three that are considered the best since Endgame, other than No Way Home. But this, it's the best story we've had from Marvel in a very long time. And very long time only means like a year, but with the amount of content that they put out, it feels like a long time.
Yeah, so sorry, Declan.
No.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's like literally the one nitpick flaw I have with the film story is that Rocket's story is ultimately like so separate from the rest of the Guardian story. And I literally cannot think of a single way that they could have somehow been brought together more. It's like if I had to nitpick, that would be the one nitpick I would
There's
say.
no reconciling that, though. It has to be that way.
Yeah.
I see your point that it's disconnected, it's flashbacks, and flashbacks are often a storytelling crutch. I say as I get into the flashback section of the movie that I'm writing right now. But it's essential for this film. You can't have Rocket's backstory with the High Evolutionary presented in any other way.
Yeah.
Can't do like a Disney Plus series setting that up. You can't
They just
have
need exposition, that's all.
But it's done, it's
son
done
of a
well
bitch.
too, right? We're not spending 15 minutes in a flashback. It's
It's
probably at
baked out.
most a minute and a half, 2 minutes. Like,
oh man, there's such good
With
scenes that I'm shocked
maybe
to
there was a
learn.
longer one that I'm forgetting, but
the
none of them were
scene
that bad.
the scene where Lila, Floor, and Teefs are killed is a
Oh
little
yeah.
longer.
Is
Yeah,
what long?
that felt like an
That
eternity.
was
That was,
probably 5 minutes.
Oh
yeah,
wow.
it felt like 15.
So it was so well made, but so painful that like, oh
Yeah,
god.
I mean, it was a tough film. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think we should talk about that too,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we have the underlying sort of earthbound aspect of it that we can relate to, which is obviously animal cruelty. And this is not an easy film. There are
Yeah.
scenes in it that are tough to watch, and that sort of goes with the entire film itself. I think, right, is that there are lots of scenes in here that we haven't gotten before, or at least the style of it. Right, we get our first F-bomb
Yeah. Yes.
in the MCU.
Yeah, we do.
I thought the action scenes were not only great, and we can talk about those in a second, but they felt a little bit more brutal than we might be used to, or it might have just been the theater I was in. It was really, really loud, but it just felt like there was more. Everything felt heavier, and I wonder why that might have been. I mean, it might have been because of the kind of story that James Gunn was trying to tell, or it just happened to be the circumstances.
Yeah, I think James Gunn's direction is probably a bit more a bit like harsher is not the best way to describe it, but slightly more gory than other directors. And I think I'm glad that that element of his direction wasn't pulled back for this one, because like I said, it adds to the proper weight for this entire story. Like the fact that it does feel like the fact that like the pain inflicted feels real on characters, like helps the story feels so real. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think, Max, you brought up animal cruelty, and Declan, you talk about the pain felt. There's body horror in this film,
Yeah.
which is a first for the MCU, if I'm not totally mistaken.
Oh yeah.
Unless you count the shit done in Iron Man 3, and we don't really talk about Iron Man 3. But there are scenes that, yes, for the emotional weight, Rocket dying and coming back from, or not dying, but dying, Rocket having a near-death experience and being brought back, and the death of Lila, Teefs, and Floor. Those are really heavy emotional moments that'll move the audience. But there are also scenes that are hard to watch because of the animal cruelty element and the body horror, where you see these admittedly CGI creatures and motion cap creatures that are just being brutalized. And those scenes, they're difficult to watch, but the payoff at the end of the film, where Rocket says at the beginning of the climax, go save the higher life forms, and then he sees what creatures are left behind after the kids are gone, and Quill says, "Oh, we got all the kids off the ship," and Rocket's like, "No, we got to get everyone." And then they get everyone. That's a really cathartic moment. That's, a win for the good guys, morally speaking, not just in the battle. Where the High Evolutionary, yeah, he's revealed to be this, gory monster under his mask, but we're seeing that his point of view, playing God with these creatures, is morally reprehensible. And not only does he get what's coming to him, but the Guardians prove something about themselves as, from a character standpoint, not just like a film character or a comic book character, but their own character, that we see something really strong about each of them, especially Rocket. I mean, you could say that the first Guardians film is about the team. It's about Gamora finding her way, away from Thanos. It's about, this group of people finding family. Second film is about Quill, clearly. That doesn't need nothing more needs to be said about that. This is Rocket's film. And even though he's separate in his story for the first two acts, he is the heart and soul of this group. More so than Quill, more so than Mantis, more so than Drax, more than Groot.
You saw a little of that in Guardians too, when they split up after and went off to Ego's planet. It it felt just wrong. But you've got Rocket on the right track back in this one, and the final, George, you talk about cathartic. I mean, how about him finally calling himself Rocket Raccoon?
Oh my
It
God, that
was
was electric.
a running, almost a gag sometimes in the MCU, and a joke that he's not a raccoon. Don't call me that. Rabbit, trash panda. It's actually worse. But how about that, right?
Yeah.
And what a moment in the film.
It's like it like I had like forgotten that was like a thing, kind of, yet it still was so not like until starting the movie, that like he was like didn't accept being a raccoon. But yeah, then when he said it, it was just like it reminded me a little bit of which I was like, I'm shocked to say, it reminded me a little bit of Captain America's Avengers assemble moment in Endgame, just in terms of like similar chills. Obviously, in terms of like epicness, not, but just in terms of the chills I got.
That, from a subjective standpoint, I can understand because you're really high on the Guardians films, and I appreciate that.
But the Cap one in Endgame was like,
The Cap one in
holy
Endgame,
shit,
other
we were
than
waiting for this. This is a
I
payoff.
other than
I'm
I
not
am
saying
Iron
I'm not
Man,
saying it is better. Just the fact that it could that moment could feel similar. I feel like is
okay,
an achievement on
okay,
Guardians three's part. I was trying to
yeah.
keep the
Yeah, that's fair.
This
Sorry,
this
George, I interrupted you.
this film is. I mean, I was mostly wrapped up with that point, but this film is, you know, I was talking about Rocket, this being Rocket's film, and yet now of the original group, it's just him.
Yeah.
And you know, Groot, James Gunn has said that the Groot that we've had since Volume 2 is Groot's son from the first film. That Groot died.
Oh
That
wow.
Groot sacrificed himself.
Oh wow.
And
I
so the
didn't
Groot that
know.
we've had since Volume 2, Baby Groot, Teenage Groot, and now fully grown, you know, Swole Groot, as they called him in posts on this film, uh, has been a new Groot. So from our original group, Drax is on Nowhere with Nebula. Quill is retired to Earth with his grandfather. Groot died at the end of the first film. Gamora is leading the Ravagers. The alternate variant Gamora is leading the Ravagers. Rocket's the only one left, and now he's got this group of Adam Warlock, and we'll talk about Adam Warlock because I really want to talk about Will Poulter here. Kraglin, Cosmo, Swole Groot, and one of the kids, I forget her name. But
yeah, who had the high evolutionary's powers, basically. Yeah.
It's this new era of the Guardians that maybe we'll see a Volume 4 in Phase 6. I doubt it because James Gunn is left for DC.
It's difficult to envision, but I guess never say never, you know.
Yeah, I mean, other directors have stepped in to Marvel franchises before. Joe Johnston did the first Captain America film before handing it off to the Russos. John Favreau did the first 2 Iron Man films before handing it off to Shane Black for Iron Man 3. Joss Whedon handed off to the Russo brothers. You know, we had
those
so many
are little
directing
special circumstances.
There have been true. There are the Guardians are so closely tied to James Gunn that I feel like it would be difficult to do Volume 4. But you have this team now. Obviously, everything is building towards Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars. I have no idea how they're going to tie the Guardians story into those, you know, into the greater narrative of the MCU. That's for Kevin Feige to figure out. But, you know, I would not mind, especially, you know, yes, you're losing a lot by losing James Gunn. But with this sort of new Guardians group, it's like the fact that we're getting Captain America 4 based on the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It's a new iteration of the same franchise, but I'm still interested to see where it goes. I would see a Guardians Volume 4 before Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars.
Yeah. George, you mentioned performances, and we can get into that in a second, but I think what we should talk about first are the 2 new characters that were introduced, 2 major new characters that were introduced. And you know, you can talk a little bit about performance, but really talk about the character themselves, maybe in this round, and then we can go into the performances right after. Declan, I'm going to go to you. Pick either the High Evolutionary or Adam Warlock, and just give us your thoughts.
I guess let me. I don't want to take I don't want to take Adam Warlock from George. So no, I do High Evolutionary is like I saw this like exchange on social media where what's the actor's name for the High Evolutionary? Do you remember? I'm blanking on his name, and I'm like I should. No, anyway.
I'm not sure I know how to pronounce it correctly, and so I'm not going to try.
Okay, yeah. I forget how to pronounce it correctly too as well. I'm kind of like, but anyway, James Gunn posted a picture of him with his like actual dog, and it was like it's like super nice. It's just like it's like while on set, he was always with his dog, and was just the nicest person. And someone replied like oh, I'm honestly so glad you posted this because there was there was a part of me that hated the High Evolutionary so much that I wondered if it applied to the actor as well. And I'm so glad to see it's wrong. And James Gunn responded like, oh, sometimes like the nicest actors can be the best at playing the biggest bastards of all time. But the fact that the High Evolutionary was like simultaneously compelling, but also so like felt so genuinely evil. I feel like it's a testament to the performance. Like I feel like in terms of like, I feel like he's honestly like, I'm trying to think, is there a MCU villain quite as like just like truly like despicable as the High Evolutionary here? I feel like his
A
credit to
bunch
the
of the
performance.
one-offs have been this bad.
Yeah, no, I'm like, I feel like yeah, it's just like it's like
I mean, if I might just cut in for a second, a lot of the Phase 4 and 5 villains have been sympathetic in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Wenwu from Shang-Chi is probably the best example. Um, but the High Evolutionary is not redeemable. He thinks he's right, but he's right for all the evil reasons.
Yeah,
So yeah,
not even like yeah.
I see what you're saying. Um, yeah, just go on from that.
Yeah. No. I think it was another like triumph, the High Evolutionary. These performance here for me. I mean, it's like he's like bad, but in a way where you can't like where it helped the story, like by how well he played evil, in my opinion.
Yeah. I'm gonna jump over to Adam Warlock unless Max has something to say about High Evolutionary.
Just a quick sort of wrap up thought. I think the High Evolutionary was a strong villain for this film. But when it comes to the High Evolutionary, like I kind of want more. Right?
That's
I want to see more out of that kind of character because he's a he's a badass. And you could tell, right? And he's threatening in a way that some of our other villains are not, right? He has an incredible mind. We haven't gotten a lot of those kinds of villains. And so having that was really cool, but I wanted to see a little bit more. But overall, very nicely done. Yeah, George, go ahead. Adam Warlock.
You said you wanted to talk about the characters and not so much the performances, but for Adam Warlock, it's impossible to separate the two because Will Poulter is perfect for this role. And we have had our fair share of perfectly cast actors since Endgame. I feel like Simu Liu is perfectly cast as Shang-Chi. God, I need to rewatch that movie. It's been too long. Christian Bale as Gore, another perfectly cast actor. Will Poulter, there's an interaction that our buddy Chip had on Twitter recently that I was just an observer. I didn't partake, but there was a conversation about MCU fans complaining about Adam Warlock's lack of screen time in the film. And yeah, I get it. He's teased in the credits scene of Guardians Volume 2. You knew he was going to be here for years. He was one of the first characters announced beyond the original team. Um, I wasn't too concerned going in about how much screen time he would get. And yet I left wanting more because Will Poulter plays this, souped up, incredibly powerful being who, in mind, is a toddler so well.
Mm-hmm.
And his interactions with all of the, especially the Guardians, largely with Gamora and somewhat with Drax and Nebula, but mostly, I'm thinking of his scenes on Counter Earth with Gamora. Really sort of just funny. And for a film with a lot of stakes and weight to it, we get this character who's providing some levity beyond what we see from comic relief characters like Drax and Mantis. We're getting humor from another source, and it's refreshing in the context of this film. There's no Yondu in this film beside that one sort of look that Kraglin has at the beginning of the third act. That sort of humor is gone. But we get Adam Warlock, who, again, is basically only a few years old at this point. Guardians 2 takes place in 2014. Guardians 3 takes place in 2023, 2024.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to figure it took Aisha and the Sovereign a while to create Adam. And then he's a little kid
Mm-hmm.
in this man's body with all of the powers of a god. And he plays that really well, the sort of, not knowing his own strength, but also here's my strength and I'm going to fucking show you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, the performance that Will Poulter gives really shows where the character's at right now. And then for him to have this moral quandary after his mother is killed on Counter Earth,
Mm-hmm.
he is now in a position where he can make his own choices. He doesn't have to do what the High Evolutionary or what Aisha wants. He can join the Guardians of the Galaxy. Everyone deserves a second chance, is the big message of the third act. And he's presented with an opportunity to do the right thing. And he does. And, he's got that sort of awkward hug at the, spaceport of nowhere right at the end. But then in the mid-credit scene, he's calling Rocket Captain. And he's all in on being a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I loved his character. I loved his performance. Screen time's not really an issue. Could I have used another scene? Sure.
I do feel like he made
I want to see more
excellent
of this
use
character.
of his screen time. So for me personally, I didn't feel shortchanged because he just, he's able to be so like such an entertaining presence that I
Absolutely.
felt that it felt longer than however many minutes he technically has, in a good way. Mm-hmm.
And I also want to point out how much more powerful the Guardians are, this iteration of the Guardians are, than the original ones,
Mm.
right? I mean, you've got
Cosmo.
Adam Warlock,
Yeah.
Cosmo,
Yeah.
High Evolutionary Girl. I don't remember her name. I'm sorry. And I mean,
Kraglin's got Yondu's arrow.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
he knows how to use the arrow.
Mhm.
God, they're
Mhm.
pretty. They're doing
Yeah.
pretty good. Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
a strong team right there.
you're losing
And
Drax, whose power is strength.
yeah,
Nebula, who's got a souped up arm.
yeah,
Mhm.
that
Quill,
arm is sick.
Whose power is, I don't know, being a dick.
And
Yeah.
yeah, being
Um,
big.
Mantis who
Gamora,
can
who is
sort
a
of.
human assassin.
Yeah.
not a human assassin, but a living weapon is how I think that was
Like
how she was
we
described in
got some
Infinity War.
we got some upgrades here.
Yeah, and the crew that we have here,
Mm,
there's going to be some, if they do decide to do a volume 4 without James Gunn,
mm,
there's going to be some fun dynamics with like Kraglin and Adam Warlock,
mm,
or Cosmo and Rocket, as two non-humanoids uh, as part of this team. And can I just say about Cosmo, Maria Bakalova, who does both the voice and the mocap, has so much fun with this character. The whole time she's just, you know, every scene that she's in with Kraglin, and she's like, "I'm not a bad dog. Say that I'm not a bad dog." And you get the poker scene with the broker from the first film, and Howard the Duck. Seth Green's back as Howard the Duck for a scene. Um, it's she's great, and
mm.
we saw her in the holiday special. Yeah, I'm all in on Cosmo.
Also, I gotta, since we're on performances, both Ben and all the Ben heads in the audience would not forgive us if we didn't talk about Nathan Fillion's performance. I think how would Ben say, it's like, yo, I think no,
Ben would never say yo.
that's true. That's true. No, but I'm sure Ben would say that for real. I also thought Nathan Fillion did a good job in his role. I'm surprised, unless it's a character that I don't know about. I'm surprised that it's not like a pre-existing character, but I think he was quite fun
Well,
in that.
he has an existing relationship with James Gunn.
Yeah.
He was featured in one scene in the first Guardians film in a like motion capture voice role in the prison,
Mm-hmm.
um, as
That makes
sort of like
sense.
the big guy that Rocket and Groot assault right when they arrive.
Mm.
That's Nathan Fillion, in case you didn't
Oh,
know.
I didn't know. I didn't know that
Um,
actually.
Nice to see Nathan Fillion's face, even though I could really only see Nathan Fillion and not his character.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a,
So
it was a
it was
little bit
fun.
of one of
That
those roles, but I was okay with it because Nathan Fillion's fun.
Yeah,
He's a
that
great.
whole sequence is and I think this is the first time we've mentioned Nathan Fillion on the pod since you and Ben were completely anal about him not being in Uncharted.
That was more Ben's thing, but I agreed with him.
Hey, you were right there with him. Don't deny
Yeah,
it.
yeah, I was right.
Um,
Okay.
but yeah, I mean that whole sequence where they're like going undercover in Orgo Corp, and really, you know, we see the team dynamic more there than anywhere else in the first two acts of the film.
Mm,
Um, Obviously, the third act climax is where they're all coming together, but when they're all, you know, Quill, Gamora, Nebula, Mantis, and Drax are, all in Orgo Corp, we're seeing the relationships that we've gotten to know over 5 films and a holiday special now.
But they're
And
built.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the bottom line.
mm.
Yeah.
Also, I feel like we should talk about this. I gotta bring this up. I was walking out of the theater. I was like slightly surprised at like just like realizing it's like, oh snap, Peter Quill and Gamora didn't come back together in the end, kind of. I feel like it was like, I mean, in of course it makes sense logically because Gamora is a different person, so it's like it wasn't the same Gamora who fell in love. But I think I was a little surprised in retrospect that it's like, wow, they went there. They
That's
and
that's the
not
only
ended.
sort of, not even a gripe that I
Mm,
would have with the ending of the film,
mm,
is where Gamora and Quill end up. But I think you said it, Declan, that this is a different Gamora.
mm,
This is, their interactions throughout the film where you see Quill over time accepting that this isn't his Gamora. He's gone through the grief. We see him, sloppy drunk at the beginning of the movie because he's sad. He goes through the whole process of, you know, reconnecting with a different version of her. And while not parting as lovers, parting as friends and colleagues and sort of a mutual respect. And while it's not a satisfying romantic conclusion to their relationship, it is, in a sense, a satisfying conclusion where they're walking away with no animosity. There's no, you know, strife or struggle between the two of them. It's just different. And I think
Yeah,
that's okay.
I agree. I would even go further. I appreciate that they didn't get back together, and I
It was a
actually liked
strong
it.
story choice not to.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because it shows that he's sticking by his decisions. He's sticking by what was already laid out in the Marvel Cinematic Universe as well, right? Some of these things that are happening within these Guardian films between Quill and Gamora didn't happen in Guardians films. Like some of the biggest stuff didn't happen in Guardians films.
Mhm.
And so it's not only respecting his own work, but also the works of other people that were creative and sort of building their own story together as a team.
Mhm.
My final point on that is that you have the Guardians who in the very first movie were so starved for looking for a family and looking for a place to belong. They were a bunch of misfits that didn't belong. I think they essentially called themselves that.
Mhm.
At the end of Guardians 3, not a single one of them doesn't belong where they're exactly supposed to be. All of them go off to do the things that they're meant to do, to accomplish things that they didn't in the past, and to live their lives as their own people, that they don't need to be a part of this group, this team forever, because it's not a team, they're a family, and they're always going to come back to one another.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I am, like I said, I think that gets at the heart of how important the characters are to the series, and what I feel is, yeah, the greatest strength of it, how much depth and how much care is given to the characters throughout the trilogy and their crossover appearances, with maybe the exception of Thor Love and Thunder.
I mean, Thor Love and Thunder, the Guardians should have been present for more of that film.
Mhm.
I feel like,
Yeah.
and I love Taika Waititi. I love what he did with Ragnarok and Love and Thunder, which I genuinely enjoyed. Um, what we got from the Guardians in that film is, yeah, Thor joined them, but they're really just, they're gonna go do their own thing.
Yeah.
This
I
is,
did. Yeah.
what I appreciated about what James Gunn did, especially with regard to the Quill Gamora relationship, is that he took, unlike what Taika Waititi did with Thor Love and Thunder, and sort of saying, all right, Thor's with the Guardians, now he's not.
Mhm.
James Gunn took what the Russos did and what Marcus and McFeely did in Infinity War and Endgame and used that to build his story and
Mhm.
didn't just say, all right, we're going to go back to what I had. You know, Waititi with Love and Thunder said, all right, we're going to go back to, you know, the core Thor group.
Mhm.
The Guardians are just going to go off and not show up again.
Mhm.
James Gunn said, all right, we're going to continue the story as it's been presented. And yeah, this film has absolutely nothing to do with the greater Marvel story in phase 4, 5, and 6. It does not go into the multiverse story whatsoever. But, if you can accept that going into the viewing experience where you're saying, "Oh, I'm not going to see something that adds to, you know, Loki and Multiverse of Madness and Quantumania and What If and all that." I'm just going to go see this team of heroes that I've loved for the last 9 years. I'm going to see their story get wrapped up. You're going to have an absolute blast. The script is so tight. The action, and Max, you said we were going to talk about the action. The action is heavy, but it's also perfectly choreographed. I mean, that hallway scene
Mm-hmm.
is just ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome, awesome
Yeah.
stuff. Um, a lot of the Guardians, particularly Bradley Cooper, Chris Pratt, Karen Gillan, those are my big three. They give their best performances in the MCU to date in this film. There's no other example in the MCU of those three giving performances as strong as they do here.
Yeah.
And, I really appreciate the level of work and care that went in on camera and behind the scenes. James Gunn wasn't supposed to direct this.
Mhm.
He was fired. And, whether you agree with the decision to fire him or not, whether you agree with the decision to bring him back or not, he turns in the best film of his career with Guardians Volume 3.
George, you mentioned action, and we've got a couple minutes left here, and so you know what? We're gonna end with a bang. We're gonna talk about all those great action scenes and what our thoughts are, and that's gonna close us out. So, Declan, do you wanna kick us off with your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's just I really enjoyed how I do feel like there's some Marvel movies where it can feel a little bit not weightless, but like sort of like just like large group of people that the hero is punching or blasting while they're talking, and it doesn't feel like it matters much to the story. I felt like the action complemented the story here phenomenally. I think a great job on that front as well.
George?
Yeah. Obviously, we get action right off the bat with Adam Warlock's assault on Nowhere. We get action in Orgo Corp's headquarters. I thought Drax was killed when he takes that blast to the chest.
Mm-hmm.
You knew Dave Bautista wanted out after this movie. I thought, wow, they're gonna kill Drax.
Mm-hmm.
Which I've thought, and Max, you can attest to this. I have thought that they were gonna kill off Drax in this movie since it was
Since the
announced.
beginning. Yeah.
Um, and everyone, just while we're talking about characters we thought were gonna be killed off, everyone and their mom thought that Rocket Raccoon was gonna die in this movie. From all the promotional material, all of the trailers, all of the clips that were, released online, we were all saying, you know, this raccoon's going to get obliterated in this movie. And, the fact that no one dies, and Max, you and I talked about this right after I got out of the movie, the fact that no one dies and yet they're all going their separate ways is a happy ending. Little melancholy, little bittersweet, but it's satisfying. And, just to get back to the action, you know, the action sequences, we see everyone at their absolute best.
Mhm.
When Groot is battling the high evolutionaries, core minions with Quill, and he's, showing up with new arms every second with new guns, and he's blasting in like 12 different directions. It's awesome. That's one of the most awesome Groot sequences we've ever seen. You know, tops anything we saw from Baby Groot in the first Guardians movie or the second Guardians movie, minus the opening dance sequence with Mr. Blue Sky. And the hallway sequence, which I already mentioned. The only way that that could have been done better is if it were one take.
Daredevil was there.
Yes, Daredevil has great hallway sequences. We're all excited for Born Again. Thank you, Declan.
I had to. I was conscious.
As long as they bring back Eldon Henson and Deborah Ann Wool.
Yes.
But yeah, the action is absolutely tremendous. We get, you know, it's not a CGI faceless army that the Guardians face off against. It's, a handful of soldiers. It's not the Chitauri, it's not the Sovereign. It's just, what's there. It's like one of the strengths of the climax of Black Widow is that there's only so many people to fight for, you know, this group of Guardians. So the action sequences throughout are just perfectly choreographed, perfectly, you know, perfect representations of the skill sets of these heroes. Nebula's arm gun, she looks like freaking Iron Man.
Mm.
And yeah, the only way that hallway scene, this is my last thought on the action, the only way that hallway scene could have been any better is if it were a single take. We get that a little bit in Avengers Age of Ultron in the church. This prolonged group shot where everyone's kicking ass with the Ultron sentries. But again, that's a faceless army. There's an unlimited number of these, robots, androids, whatever you want to call them. If this had been one take, man, that would have been one of the best sequences, and it already is one of the best sequences in the MCU post Endgame, and maybe overall.
Yeah, it's got to be up there. I mean, in terms of new thoughts on action, I don't have a lot to add. I mean, I agree with everything that you guys said, right? I mean, it was, I said it earlier, it's heavy. I could feel it in my chair. Like when Adam Warlock was punching someone in the face, I could feel that. I mean, that felt like something. The whole movie did, not just the action sequences, the whole movie did emotionally, as well. But I think that's going to do it for us tonight. I don't think we could recommend going to see this movie highly enough. I'm excited to see what the MCU has left for us this year. I mean, we've got a couple more projects coming out. I think the next one is Loki,
Secret
right?
Invasion.
Yeah. Oh, Secret Invasion. That's right.
Secret Invasion is June. Loki, I think, is going to be August.
Yeah.
We have the Marvels in November.
Yeah. So
I was just one quick note on the Marvels.
Yeah.
I was a little worried going into Guardians 3 because I know that the Marvels is also kind of going to be separate from the multiverse story that's been set up through, WandaVision, Doctor Strange, Loki,
Yeah.
What If, Quantumania. But if it's anywhere close to the strength of Guardians Volume 3, why not? If the MCU can replicate this quality, it's a complete return to form from what we've seen the last few years.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah.
But seriously, go enjoy Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Let us know what you think in the comments down below. Like and subscribe, and we will see you next week. All right. Good night.
Right.